Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Just a Dude podcast. I'm your host, Nathan, and today is Friday, which means it's Just a Dude in the News Day. We've got a loaded episode breaking down the biggest stories shaking up America right now. If you could do us a favor and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, we'd really appreciate it. We thank you for your help and your support. Today, we're talking about Trump's executive actions, controversial pardons, new policies, economic shifts, military movements, and even some tragic events that have rocked the nation. There's a lot to cover, so let's dive right in. So Trump is back in office and wasting no time reshaping federal policy through executive actions. One of his biggest moves has been addressing what he calls the cost of living crisis by slashing regulations in energy and trade. Now the administration argues that this will lower consumer costs, but environmentalists are sounding the alarm, saying it could accelerate climate change. Then there's the controversy surrounding his decision to revoke security clearances for former intelligence officials like John Bolton. Trump claims these individuals are a threat to national security, but critics say it's a dangerous move that undermines the integrity of intelligence agencies. And of course, he's going after woke policies, dismantling diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in federal agencies. This is sparking major backlash from civil rights groups who argue it's an attack on social progress. Legal challenges are already being prepared, and we could see protests and lawsuits soon. This is just the beginning, folks. By getting rid of DEI, it gives the opportunity for people to hire the best person for the job regardless of the color of their skin, their cultural background, or their educational purpose. Additionally, Trump has taken steps to fast-track energy projects by reducing the number of permits needed, arguing that this will create jobs and make America more energy independent. On the other hand, economists warn that this could have mixed effects. While some industries might benefit, others could suffer from environmental degradation and long-term economic instability. Another shift includes Trump's push to restructure the Department of Education, calling for increased school choice and elimination of some federal oversight in education. Supporters say this will allow parents more control over their children's schooling, while critics argue it could deepen educational disparities, particularly for lower-income students. My thought is it'd be great to give the power back to the states so that they can have the power to educate their students that's best for their region. Lastly, Trump has signaled his intent to overhaul health care by attempting to repeal parts of the Affordable Care Act again. This move has reignited debates over health care access, insurance premiums, and pre-existing conditions, with millions of Americans anxiously watching to see what changes might come. For me, coming from a healthcare market, I've seen the Affordable Care Act do more harm than it has done good in this case. A lot of lower-income families now have high deductible plans that they must meet before the insurance through the Affordable Care Act takes place. This is causing more of a burden on our lower-income families that don't necessarily meet the requirements for Medicaid programs. In my opinion, the only good thing to come from the Affordable Care Act was the exclusion on pre-existing conditions. This is something that I hope the Trump administration works towards to keep no matter what plan they go for. Next, I want to talk about Trump's pardons of the January 6th defendants. This one we covered last week, but this is a big one. It's a bombshell. Trump's pardoned nearly all individuals convicted in the connection with the January 6th riot. The move has divided the nation, with Trump supporters praising it as justice for what they see as political prisoners, while law enforcement officials and victims' families call it an endorsement of lawlessness. The bigger question now is, what does this mean for the future of political protests? If there are no consequences for storming the Capitol, does this set a precedent for future unrest? Legal experts are warning that this could weaken the rule of law, while Trump insists it's about correcting unfair punishments. Either way, this decision is going to have long-lasting impacts on the political landscape. Beyond the legal ramifications, there's also the cultural impact of these pardons. Many Americans see this as a rewriting of history, framing the riot as a patriotic act rather than insurrection. This has led to fierce debate in schools, the media, and even among families about what the true legacy of January 6th should be. In my opinion, January 6th was nothing more than a bunch of patriotic people that participated in a riot. That riot that we saw the same with Black Lives Matters in Wisconsin and around the rest of the country. Furthermore, some of the pardoned individuals have expressed intentions to run for public office or take active roles in Trump's political movements. This has raised concerns about normalization of political violence and the possibility of further radicalization within certain segments of the population. There's also an international dimension. Some foreign governments and global organizations have condemned the pardons, arguing that they weaken America's credibility when it comes to upholding democratic values. This could have implications for U.S. relations with allies and global institutions in the coming years. Another major policy shift is from the Trump administration is that he has implemented the one flag policy, banning pride flags, Black Lives Matter flags, and other movement-related symbols on government property. Supporters say it unifies the country under one national symbol, the American flag. Critics, however, argue that it stifles free expression and is a direct attack on marginalized communities. The ACLU and other civil rights groups are already preparing legal challenges, arguing that this is a violation of the First Amendment. Meanwhile, the public is split. Some believe this brings back traditional values, while others see it as government overreach. Expect this issue to land in court sooner rather than later. Beyond the legal battles, there's also the question of how this will affect government employees and federal agencies. Many workplaces have used symbols like the pride flag to show inclusivity and support for the marginalized groups. The removal of these symbols could lead to a decline in workplace morale and spark internal conflicts. In the reality of things, this is the United States of America. And truthfully, our government should only be flying our flag and show neutrality in this topic. In addition, cities and states that oppose this policy may push back by finding legal loopholes or implementing their own countermeasures, further escalating tensions between state and federal authorities. From a political standpoint, this policy is likely to become a major talking point in upcoming elections. Some candidates have already taken strong stances, with conservatives praising it as a move towards national unity, while progressives argue it suppresses free expression. The debate over this policy is expected to intensify as campaigns gear up, with each side leveraging it to appeal to their respective voter bases. Tragedy has struck California once again, with the Palisades and Eaton fires devastating communities, leaving 29 dead and thousands displaced. Governor Newsom has deployed massive firefighting resources, but the scale of this disaster is overwhelming. Experts say these fires are worsened by extreme drought and climate change, reigniting debates about federal and state climate policies. Should there be stricter building codes? Should controlled burns be mandated? And how much of this disaster is a result of government inaction? One thing's for sure, this won't be the last catastrophic wildfire we see. The economic toll is another factor. Billions of dollars in damage have been recorded, and insurance companies are struggling to keep up with claims. Some homeowners in high-risk areas are even finding it impossible to get insured, forcing them to relocate or take on immense financial burdens. Meanwhile, firefighters are pushing for better working conditions and increased funding for wildfire prevention. Many argue that their resources are stretched too thin, and without proper investment, the situation will only worsen. This raises the question of how the federal government will respond. Will Trump's administration prioritize funding for wildfire prevention, or will it take a different approach? In the past, we saw the Trump administration try to be proactive with the state of California, which was declined by Governor Newsom. Survivors of these wildfires are now faced with rebuilding their lives. Displacement has become a growing issue, with thousands forced into temporary shelters and emergency housing programs. Community efforts and charity organizations are stepping in, but long-term solutions remain uncertain. As these fires become more frequent, it's clear that a more comprehensive strategy is needed to protect the lives of its citizens and property in California. Trump's conviction on 34 counts of falsifying business records related to hush money payments has become a litmus test for the legal accountability of political figures. This case, stemming from payments made during the 2016 election to silence allegations of affairs, has captured national attention due to its implications for campaign finance laws and the personal conduct of elected officials. Trump's legal team argues that the charges were politically motivated and that the legal interpretation of the payments as campaign contributions was flawed. Conversely, legal analysts supporting the conviction point to clear evidence of intent to influence the election, emphasizing that no one is above the law. The appeal process has reignited debates over the intersection of law and politics, with outcomes potentially affecting future political campaigns, transparency, and accountability. Beyond the legal and political ramifications, the case has also stirred public opinion. Supporters of Trump see this as another instance of a politically charged legal system being used against him, while his critics argue that the justice system must hold everyone accountable, regardless of status. The divide reflects the broader polarization in the country, the media outlets framing the appeal in vastly different ways depending on their political leanings. If the conviction is overturned, which we believe it will be, it could embolden Trump's base and strengthen his claims of political persecution. However, if upheld, it might complicate his political future, potentially barring him from holding office again, depending on legal interpretations and legislative responses. The final ruling could set a precedent for how future cases involving high-profile politicians are handled. The case has also raised questions about the broader implications of financial transparency in political campaigns. Some lawmakers are now pushing for stricter regulations to prevent similar situations in the future, while others argue that the existing laws are sufficient and that the issue lies in selective enforcement. Regardless of the outcome, this case is shaping up to be one of the defining legal battles of Trump's political career. With Trump's return to the White House, corporate America is facing a recalibration of its social and economic strategies. His executive orders aimed at dismantling diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI initiatives, have put companies in a bind as they balance compliance with federal directives and maintaining a commitment to inclusive workplaces. Many corporations, especially those with global operations, are cautiously navigating this new landscape, some opting to quietly protect their DEI programs while publicly aligning with the administration's rhetoric. This shift has led to concerns about talent retention and attraction, as younger workers and diverse talent pools might be deterred by perceived backsliding on social issues. Employees and labor unions have already begun pushing back, with some calling for internal policy protections to safeguard workplace inclusivity, regardless of federal mandates. Additionally, there's an economic dimension where businesses are looking to capitalize on deregulation and tax policies that favor traditional business models, but might risk alienating consumer bases that value corporate social responsibility. Companies that have previously leaned into progressive branding efforts now face difficult choices about how to position themselves in the changing political climate. Meanwhile, Wall Street is reacting with cautious optimism. Investors see potential benefits in reduced regulations and corporate tax breaks, but uncertainties remain regarding trade policies and long-term economic stability. While some businesses are thriving under the new regulatory landscape, others are bracing for potential backlash from consumers and advocacy groups. The long-term impact on corporate culture, employee morale, and public perception remains to be seen, but the immediate response has been one of strategic reassessment across industries. The 2025 tax season is upon us under the shadow of significant policy shifts initiated by the Trump administration, particularly concerning corporate tax rates. These cuts, aimed at stimulating economic activity, have led to a surge in corporate profits and stock buybacks, with many businesses reinvesting in expansion or returning capital to shareholders. However, this has not universally translated into the anticipated wave of job creation or wage growth. Critics argue that without stringent conditions on how tax savings are used, companies might opt for short-term financial strategies over long-term investment in workforce development or research and development, potentially leading to a hollow economic boom. Moreover, the reduction in corporate tax revenue has increased scrutiny on the government's fiscal strategy, with concerns mounting over how to finance public services without further ballooning the national debt. On the individual taxpayer front, the adjustments to personal income tax brackets and deductions have mixed implications. The standard deduction has been significantly increased, simplifying tax filing for many but potentially reducing incentives for charitable giving and home ownership, which were previously supported through itemized deductions. For middle-class families, this means navigating a new landscape where the benefits of tax reform might not be as pronounced, especially if they do not see corresponding increases in wages or employment opportunities. Financial advisors are arguing taxpayers to reassess their financial strategies, particularly in areas like retirement planning and investment, to maximize the benefits of the current tax environment. The debate continues on whether these tax policies truly serve the broad middle class or if they inadvertently contribute to income inequality by favoring those with higher incomes and more complex investment portfolios. For me, I see these tax breaks as putting more money in my pocket, and since the tax breaks have come, I've definitely seen an increase in my paychecks. As we move through tax season, the broader economic implication of these tax policies are becoming a focal point for both economic analysts and the public. The increase in disposable income for some has indeed led to a noticeable uptick in consumer spending, particularly in sectors like retail and entertainment, providing a temporary boost to the economy. However, this spending surge could be short-lived if not underpinned by sustainable wage growth and job creation. Economists are divided on this topic. Some predict a robust economic expansion if businesses use their tax savings wisely, while others foresee a scenario where the benefits of tax cuts are not broadly shared, leading to potential economic correction when the stimulus effect wanes. Lawmakers are under pressure to monitor these outcomes closely, possibly revisiting tax policy adjustments to ensure they align with broader economic goals like reducing income disparity and ensuring fiscal responsibility. The outcomes of this tax season could very well dictate the direction of the economic policy discussions for years to come. The deployment of the 82nd Airborne Division to the Arctic region signals a strategic response to the shifting geopolitical landscape. This move underscores the U.S.'s commitment to countering potential threats in an increasingly contested area, driven by climate change's opening of new routes and resources. However, this deployment also raises questions about the prioritization of military might over the forms of strategic engagement, like diplomacy or economic measures in regions where environmental changes are reshaping traditional conflict zones. The military's focus on the Arctic isn't just about countering immediate threats from nations like Russia and China, who have shown increased activity there, but also about securing future interests in a region where melting ice is creating new navigable waters and resource-rich areas. Critics argue, though, that this emphasis might detract from addressing emerging challenges in cyber and space domains, where the threats are less visible but potentially as significant. This deployment also sparks a conversation about military spending and priorities. With the significant costs associated with maintaining a presence in the harsh Arctic environment, there's debate over whether these resources should be reallocated to bolster capabilities in areas like cyber defense or to address domestic security issues. The balance between projecting military power and innovating in new warfare domains is a delicate one, especially as adversaries advance in their technology like AI and unmanned systems. Internationally, this move could either strengthen or strain alliances, particularly within frameworks like NATO, where Arctic security is a shared concern. The U.S. aims to foster cooperation for collective security, but the deployment must be diplomatically nuanced to avoid escalating tensions into a new Cold War scenario. The strategic implications extend beyond military posturing, touching on international law, environmental protection, and the governance of the frontier. The music world mourns the loss of Marianne Faithfull, whose career spanned over 6 decades and left an indelible mark on rock music, from her early days with the Rolling Stones to her later reinventions as a solo artist. Faithfull's journey was one of resilience and artistic evolution. Her passing is not just a loss of musical icon, but also a moment to reflect on how the industry has evolved in its treatment and perception of female artists. Faithfull's legacy challenges the music industry to continue evolving, particularly in how it supports and represents women. Her advocacy for mental health and her personal battles with addiction highlight the need for a more empathetic approach to artists' well-being. Her music and life story will continue to inspire, reminding us of the power of a personal transformation in art. The tragic collision of an American Airlines regional jet with a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter has brought to the forefront significant safety concerns in aviation, especially regarding the integration of military aircraft into civilian airspace. This accident has led to calls for a comprehensive review of air traffic management protocols, particularly in dense shared airspaces like Washington, D.C. The incident has highlighted several systemic issues, from potential understaffing in air traffic control towers to the need for advanced technological solutions for real-time aircraft tracking and collision avoidance. The National Transportation Safety Board, or NTSB, is now under pressure to investigate not just the specific incident, but also the broader implications for aviation safety. This tragedy has also sparked a national conversation about grief, community support, and the human cost of such accidents. The loss of young athletes and their family has galvanized public demand for systemic changes in how military and civilian aircraft share the skies. The dialogue includes not only technical solutions, but a cultural shift towards prioritizing safety over efficiency or convenience. The nomination of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for a key health role has ignited controversy due to his vocal anti-vaccine stance and his lineage in the Kennedy political dynasty. This appointment raises questions about the influence of personal beliefs on public health policy and the potential erosion of scientific consensus in decision-making. Kennedy's advocacy for environmental causes is weighed against his skepticism of vaccine safety, creating a divide within the health community. His potential leadership could shift focus of health agencies like the FDA, CDC, and NIH, possibly leading to a reevaluation of how these institutions operate, particularly in terms of transparency and public trust. The confirmation hearings are serving as a battleground for broader debates on what health policies should look like in the U.S., how much influence personal ideology should have on national health strategies, and how to navigate the complex relationship between science, politics, and public health. The outcome of this nomination could set precedents for how health officials are chosen in the future, influencing the direction of public health for years to come. One thing's for sure, Kennedy is advocating for getting rid of chemicals that are in our food that seem to have no value or added value to our life. That's one thing that we can all get behind. Well, that's all for this week's episode of Just a Dude podcast. We've covered a lot of ground, from policy changes to tragic losses and everything in between. I am happy to announce that beginning Monday, February 10th, we will begin having guests on the show. We will take a break from our constitutional discussion and talk with some interesting guests. Make sure to stay tuned. Thanks again for joining us today, and remember, in a world full of news, it's good to take a moment just to be a dude or a dudette. If you like this episode, make sure you like, subscribe, and share. Don't forget to follow us on all major social media platforms for more updates. Catch you next week for more.